Hey, Fearless family, welcome back to Fearless Tips and Talks. This is tip 39. And before we jump in, I just want to remind you that this season does look different. We're going unpolished and unproduced. This is on my cell phone without fancy mics, without fancy music to introduce the show. And in the past, I had someone editing these episodes, but honestly, the pressure of paying for that production with limited finances on a shoestring budget within a ministry was really hard. And at the same time, I still felt like I had some wisdom to share that I wanted to put out there. So here I am, just showing up raw and real because I believe this message matters. I believe speaking out about fear and anxiety matters, even if it's a little bit unpolished. So the last tip, I told you we're going to talk about conflict today. So that's what we're going to do, navigating conflict from a Christian perspective. Now, conflict creates an enormous amount of anxiety in people's lives, and so often we believe that lie that avoiding conflict will bring peace, but the truth is, avoidance usually brings more pressure, more worry, more confusion, and eventually crazy chaos. It's actually quite courageous to deal with conflict, and when we do it prayerfully and biblically, God can use it to grow us closer to others and to Him, which is such a beautiful thing. So, what do we do? First, we need to understand the model Jesus gave us in Matthew 18. He says, go directly to that person, not to gossip. Don't recruit allies to get people on your side, but to humbly and prayerfully go to the one who has hurt you, or with whomever the person or group is that you have conflict with. Now, the posture you bring in that moment is everything. Timing, tone, and posture matter. Before you step into that conversation, look at the plank at your own eye. Even if 98% of the conflict is on the other person, ask yourself, what 2% do I need to own? Taking responsibility for your part creates the space of humility. And I like to say that humility always goes first. So, you've prayed. You've chosen the right time to speak about this. You're using the right tone and you have the right posture and you've owned your part. Then their response is not your responsibility. If they respond defensively with blame or refuse to take responsibility, you can stay confident and firm. You don't need to be a doormat. At the same time, you cannot control or change their heart. If they're unwilling to repent, apologize, say those dreaded words, I'm sorry, or take responsibility for their part, then that's the moment to reflect, do I need some boundaries? Boundaries aren't a punishment. They're a healthy guardrail to protect your heart and relationships. Now, let's say it goes well. Let's say best case scenario, right? When conflict is done well with prayer and humility, it often brings the two people closer together. And I know I have found that to be true for myself. True intimacy is not like you're never going to have conflict. It's actually forged in the fire of conflict, handled well. You share honestly, you listen, you forgive, and then on the other side, the bond grows stronger, the friendship gets better. Now, I wanted to just talk about, what about if it's a non-Christian, okay? And you're trying to navigate conflict with someone who is not a believer. Now, this is tricky. You can't expect someone that's non-Christian to live by the biblical standards that you have. Instead, you bring the fruit of the Spirit into the conversation. Love, kindness, gentleness, and self-control. You can still be humble, own your part, go to them directly, and speak with truth and grace. But ultimately, you may need to hold your convictions while respecting that they might not see things through the same lens of faith. And in those cases, prayer becomes the best possible thing you could do. And boundaries. You may have to set some boundaries and just use wisdom and discernment in those spaces and places. So conflict isn't something you run from. It's something to approach with prayer, humility, and courage. And when it's done well, it can lead to a deeper, intimate, stronger faith, more peace than avoiding conflict could ever bring. So remember, avoiding conflict doesn't bring peace. It brings pressure. But facing it with God's help can bring growth and freedom. I hope you enjoyed this tip today on not avoiding conflict.